I'm a little late to the party, but I recently watched the Galaxy Unpacked event where Samsung announced new features of the Galaxy S24 and S24 Plus. Those include the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chip, 7 years of software updates, and screens that max out at 2600 nits of brightness. But the event also left a lot out. Samsung sidestepped specs and hardware, instead focusing on software features powered by AI. But the thing about that is it might make this phone a worse deal for you. If you care more about specs than AI smarts, last year's S23 would save you hundreds of dollars. You could even get the S23 Ultra for around $700 used and still save money versus a base S24. But you need to know how good the AI features and other upgrades are to make a decision, so let's break down everything new with the Galaxy S24 and S24 Plus. First up, Samsung introduced a suite of AI features in the Notes app called Note Assist. Note Assist can automatically format certain text, so if it's meeting notes, it can arrange that nicely into sections, and if it's something like class notes, it can organize that into headers and bullet points. There's also AI summarizations to get the gist of any note in seconds. There's also a spell check feature that can run through your notes and make corrections instantly, and finally, the ability to generate covers for notes. That means Note Assist will scan through the contents of your notes to generate a title and icon to make scrolling through your notes more efficient. There's also new AI features in the voice recorder on the S24. After you finish recording, you'll get a high-quality transcript that now has speaker labels, and you can generate a summary of the transcript or translate it. Samsung actually focused very heavily on translations in general during the event, so let's talk about those features. There's live translations for phone calls, text messages, and in-person conversations. For phone calls, this operates just how you'd expect, with an automated voice repeating what each person said, just in the other person's language. There's also the option to cut out the original voices so you, or the person on the other end, only hears the translated voice. Similar to phone calls, live translations are now available in person, so you can have a back and forth conversation using the phone as an interpreter. Finally, live translations are also baked into text messages, so you can instantly translate entire conversations, no copy and paste required. Bridging off that, there's another new AI feature for text messages and also social media or emails called Chat Assist. This uses AI to rewrite your text in different tones. Those include social, polite, and emojify. I personally don't find this too useful, but it's there if you want to use it. Now, there's more AI features to talk about, including a good number of software camera features, but to round out this general AI features section, I'll talk about Circle to Search. This is the software feature that stuck out to me the most during the event, and it brings Google Lens functionality to any screen of any app on the phone. If you're scrolling on YouTube Shorts and see a veggie you've never seen before, you can circle it to find out what it is. Or if you're on Instagram and see a chair you like, you can circle that and find where you can buy one for yourself. You can pull up image-based results for just about anything on your screen, and Circle to Search only uses the portion of the screen you circled to respect your privacy. You can also long press and drag to select text to perform a more traditional search. This is a very interesting feature to round out the AI capabilities of the S24, because unlike speaker labels in the voice recorder and tone changing in text messages, this is a Google-powered feature the S24 series has that Pixels don't. Let's move into the hardware section and talk what's changed with the S24 and S24 Plus. The overall footprint is the same as last year, with a perfectly flat front and back and symmetrical bezels around the screen on the front. The bezels are actually even smaller this year, bumping the screen-to-body ratios of the phones up 4% to comfortably over 90%. This won't drastically change how the front of the phone looks, but it is a bigger improvement to the bezels than this year's Pixels and iPhones. Samsung also flattened out the aluminum sides of the phone that used to be a bit bulbous on the S23 and S23 Plus. The edges are not perfectly sharp, as there's a small corner radius to them similar to the iPhone 15 series. And yes, they do look more like the iPhone than ever. And finally, this year's new mineral-inspired colors are black, gray, violet, and yellow. Now coming back to the screens, the sizes are 6.2 and 6.7 inches, and they're 120Hz. The S24 is still 1080p plus resolution, while the S24 Plus is now 1440p plus resolution. More importantly though, both these screens get as bright as a blazing 2600 nits brightness. That's brighter than the latest Pixels and iPhones, which is something last year's Galaxies couldn't say. Getting deeper into the phones, the S24 and S24 Plus have 8 gigs of RAM and are powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, one of the fastest phone chips out there. The 8 Gen 3 brings excellent everyday performance, it's very good for gaming, and it'll stay fast for years going into the future. It's also worth pointing out this chip dwarfs the Tensor G3 chip in the latest pixels. Actually, last year's 8 Gen 2 still beats the latest Tensor chip. I always say Pixels still have great everyday performance, but if raw power is what you're going for, the Galaxy S24 series will be better for you. Also, Google has historically tried to make up for the lower benchmark scores with AI smarts, but the Galaxy's catching up here, so it'll be interesting to see how the battle of Tensor versus Snapdragon chips plays out in the coming years. One side note to everything I just said about performance is that unfortunately, Samsung is back to using their own Exynos chips for certain regions. This year, they're swapping the 8 Gen 3 with the Exynos 2400, and it is slower by every benchmark out there. If you live in a region where Samsung uses Exynos chips, definitely be aware of this and adjust your buying decision accordingly. To wrap up performance of the S24 and S24 Plus, I'll say these phones more or less match the performance of the iPhone 15 Pro for the Android side of the aisle. Moving into cameras, the hardware on the back of the Galaxy S24 and S24 Plus has not changed, and we have a 50 megapixel main camera, a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, and a 12 megapixel 0.6x ultrawide on the back of the phone. The front camera is 12 megapixels with autofocus. This is a solid set of lenses, especially the main, and you'll be snapping quality photos and crispy videos using these cameras. The S24 series is still one of the only phones from a major brand that can shoot 8K video, and if you remember from last year, it's upgraded to be better than ever. Also for video, there's now AI slow-mo previews in the gallery that let you tap and hold any playing video to see what it'd look like slowed down. And you can jump into the editor to save that slow-mo video with those extra AI-generated frames. As for photos, there's new Super HDR that shows you HDR previews of photos in the camera app before actually taking the photos. This even extends to social media apps like Instagram and Snapchat, where you can preview and post photos and videos in HDR. There's also an entire AI photo editor called Photo Assist, reminiscent of the Magic Editor on Pixel phones. Photo Assist includes generative edit that supports moving, resizing, or removing objects in photos, and it'll fill in the details behind the edits. There's also edit suggestions for adding background blur, colorizing, or remastering photos. Overall, camera hardware on the S24 didn't change, but is still very good, and software is overhauled with all the AI editing features you'd ever need. As we start to finish up the video, the S24 and S24 Plus both have bigger batteries. The S24 is up 100 mAh to 4000 mAh total, and the S24 Plus is up 200 mAh to 4900 mAh total. This year's Galaxies are also some of the first devices to support QuickShare, the new file sharing standard for Android and Windows devices. Samsung also announced the S24 series will receive 7 years of software updates. This is a big deal, and it brings the big three phone manufacturers in my mind, Apple, Samsung, and Google, up to the same level of commitment for future-proofing their phones. Finally, the S24 starts at $800 for an 128GB model, and the S24 Plus starts at $1,000 for a 256GB model. But now that we've run through all the upgrades to the Galaxy S24 and S24 Plus, let's talk about the big picture. I think it's commendable Samsung is switching to this AI approach to their phones because Galaxies have always had best-in-class hardware, but weren't necessarily the smartest smartphone. But I can't help but think this makes the S23 and S23 Plus an even better deal because it takes time to get the ball rolling with a new product strategy. These are all first-gen features for the Galaxy, so in the grand scheme of things, they're not particularly amazing or worth upgrading for. An S23, S23 Plus, or S23 Ultra would save you money versus a base S24. An S23 Ultra for only $700 used sticks out as a particularly good deal versus an $800 base S24. But at the same time, if money is no object to you, the S24 series is looking pretty good, and they're absolutely still heavyweights for flagship Android phones. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more quality tech videos, and I'll see you later.